G'day everyone and welcome to episode 92 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. From Kununurra to Bendigo, Bunbury to Townsville and everywhere in between. This podcast is all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host, Trent Robinson. Thank you for joining me. Big episode today. We'll be talking to Nathan Higgins from Advanced Flight Theory. But before we get into that, it's Monday. By the time you're listening to this, I should be in, hopefully, sunny Sydney, ready for the Australian Aviation Awards this Thursday night. Very much looking forward to it and meeting everybody and hopefully, like I said, taking home the award for you all, which is the Aviation Safety Professional Award. So very much excited in that and hopefully some good news Thursday night, Friday morning. As I record this, yet another tragedy, this time over in the Tiwi Islands here in the Northern Territory. The US Marine Corps Osprey, or MV-22, has gone down. What, why, how, don't know right now, but it has been confirmed. 3 deceased at this time, others in surgery, and just devastating for all the military personnel up here and everybody involved. So wishing everyone a very speedy recovery, and no doubt very soon we'll find out more about the nature of the accident. And the Osprey has been a very popular aircraft, but it's also been plagued with issues. I know I had a viral video on Instagram, and a lot of the American viewers of that video are very critical of the aircraft. But having spoken to the pilots, I know they're all very supportive of the platform and love flying it. But hopefully it doesn't result in a grounding of the aircraft. It's just so special and unique, and it'll be great to still see it airborne. So before I move on to the interview, Nathan and I did talk for some time and talked about all sorts of things. And I felt it was probably a little bit long just to include everything here. So for those listening right now, this will be a slightly abbreviated version. If you'd love to hear the full version, it will be available for all Patreon members on the Patreon account, patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. And now all podcasts are also available as exclusive content on Spotify or other platforms that are starting to sign up. So if you'd like to go check that out, head over to the Patreon page. There's 3 levels of membership from $5 to $30, and I'd love to have you on board, your support, and there will be more exclusive content coming as we go along. All right, so here's the interview. ATPL theory subjects, often the most torturous part of an aviator's journey. Whether it's extreme number crunching for the flight planning or performance and loading, or trying to get your head around how 767's automation systems work, it's often an area students need help. And fortunately, for nearly 30 years now and counting, that help has been in the form of advanced flight theory. So today we're discussing all things ATPL theory, and I'm joined by the man himself, Nathan Higgins. Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Trent. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It is great to be talking to you finally. Like I said, it's been some 21 years since I was sitting in your, well, not your very classroom now because you've just changed locations, but the migration of the buildings and everything else, it's been an amazing journey, and just so great to still see you passionate and doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of years, with the move and COVID and all that's been going on. So it's, we finally feel like we're sort of getting our feet grounded again after all of that, like the rest of the industry. So it's, happy to be teaching with a class again, face to face. It's good.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we'll definitely get into that.
Sure.
So let's first talk about just your aviation sort of journey as to from either childhood to now. What first got you into flying?
I guess like a lot of us, just couldn't think of anything else we'd rather be doing. We're just passionate about it, although it did come a little bit later for me because I'd always had an interest in flying, and I think my first ride in an airplane was a old 1940s Oster back in the 80s out of Maroochydore here. Back it was a chain link fence and some grass and tail dragger, and friends of a friends had a plane, so we went up flying, and that really stuck with me. I thought, oh my God, this is just fantastic. So never really thought that you could do it, and pilots there must be born that way, not trained. So I didn't really seriously consider getting into aviation, and thought I'd better have a proper career first. I I ended up going school teaching. So that was my uni degree out of school, went straight pretty much through to uni after a gap year, and did teach. So taught secondary for only a year, as it turned out. Figured that maybe that's not probably the path I wanted to follow long term. Thought, well, I knew I got that flying bug. That itch never went away. So I bit the bullet and resigned the teaching post, and then went flying. And that was in the late 80s when I was teaching, 89, and then started to fly in 1991. And I guess because I had that teaching background, it was inevitable that it'd probably end up in an educational role within the aviation industry at some point. In the school that I was at the time was down at Caloundra, just down the road from where I am now, little intersecting 800-meter strips, and still there in the middle of suburbia, landlocked by Pelican Waters. And yeah, great little spot though. I've got a really soft spot for Caloundra and still drop in there a bit in the 172 whenever I'm out and about. But went flying there, and the school cottoned on that I was a school teacher. Oh, yeah, we need a BAK teacher. So can you do BAK? Oh, I guess. So I started to teach that, and kind of our CPL instructor's gone, but it's helicopter. So can you do that? So I got into helicopter commercial theory. Warren McIver was the chief ground instructor down at East Coast Helicopters, as it was back then. Was owned by Lou Webb, Barry Costa, those guys, and ended up teaching Barry's boys too back in the day, and they're still flying today with Shane and the crew. So yeah, a lot of history back there in the 90s, and then started to teach fixed wing as well. So it was really commercial grounding in helicopter commercial theory, which I hadn't actually finished my license at that stage, even for rotary, and still haven't all these years later. I've soloed in a Robinson, Robinson. Yeah. No relation,
no relation.
I'm sure. Yeah. No relation to Frank. Sadly passed away this year. But the little Robbie. So, but I had taught commercial heli for a while. So we sort of continued on doing that. And then just one thing led to another, did my instructor rating, and then went on and instructed fixed wing there for a couple of years. So that's sort of how it all started for me. The school kept me. I guess I never left the school and fell into aviation that way. Did a bit of time in tail draggers with the Skyfox and the Jabiru, and got my AUF instructor rating as well. So dabbled in ultralights, flew down to Tassie in a Skyfox in 95, I think that was.
Oh, wow. How long did that take?
Sky race. 3 days. Yeah. So Sky Race 95 it was. I used to do pylon racing down at Valleyfield in Launceston there. And that was one of the years that Bob Hoover came out. It was the first time I got to meet Bob. So that was pretty amazing, just getting to see him, because he'd lost his US medical. So
yes, that was that whole saga. And
that's right. So he was out here as race marshal, flying. That's right, flying the Mustang, and got to meet him. Got the cap. He signed my little Skyfox hat and had a chat to him. And he heard that we'd come down from the mainland. He goes, "Wow, you fly an ultralight across Bass Strait? You guys are crazy." Because he'd seen the water and we're coming across. We went up to 10 grand. It took forever, but yeah, so that was a bit of an adventure. So yeah, the ultralight days were fun, and I have a lot of fond memories of those as well. So kind of got into the two together, GA and what we now call LSA. But yeah, it was all good fun. Loved it. Yeah. Loved those instructing times.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic, isn't it? Rewarding. So what then led to them sort of upgrading from the Skyfox into what I assume
it was a different school.
Joy.
This was So for me for the 172, that came later when we founded the company. So I'll probably I'll cover that maybe when we just get onto the origins of advanced flight theory. So I was just moonlighting at the ultralight school, and then the fixed wing school, which was then Chopperline by that stage. East Coast Helicopters rebranded. That was around Expo. They started really the Expo 88. That was sort of their big push back down with East Coast Helicopters. But then they rebranded for the training as Chopperline, which then extended right throughout the 90s to the early 2000s. And then they were, I think they were taken over by Airways. So then was, I guess, really early 90s, about 91, 92. And the chief ground instructor at Chopperline, Warren, and myself thought, well, what next? And there was a obvious hole in ATPL theory at that stage. It was around the time the syllabus had changed from what was the old senior commercial senior comms, as they used to call it. A lot of the old guard that had been teaching it for a lot of years had sort of gotten towards the end of their tenure and really couldn't really be bothered working up to the new syllabus and the new style, and there was just a bit of a gulf in the theory provision. So we thought, well, maybe we'll look at that. And I hadn't really done ATPL at that stage, but got into the theory of CPL, so that it was a natural progression then really to have a look at ATPL. So together, Warren and I founded the Advanced Flight Theory business, and we moved up to the sunny coast, so just up the road to what was then the Marucci Airport, so then became Sunshine Coast Airport with a rebrand a few years later. We took a lease on a plot of land, put up a demountable and hung up the shingle and started to teach, and Warren did the rotary ATPL, which is a bit of a boutique license, being a sort of small percentage of the market compared to fixed wing, and still going on today. It's, I think, to my knowledge, the only school where you can do rotary ATPL subjects, because 4 of them are common. Well, 4 out of the 7 are common, but there's specific Sikorsky and flight planning subjects, obviously very separate to the fixed wing. So it's on a Sikorsky 76, and so just a big multi-engine helicopter rather than a multi-engine aeroplane like aeroplane fixed wing.
Yeah. Well, I was at Broome, was it last year, watching them come in and out, and then they're also operating out of Truscott there.
The massive 92s,
massive choppers, aren't they?
Exactly, massive machines. The Truscott's a little busy airport, bustling, and out to the whatever the floating rig facility out there they call it. One of the pilots was just in this morning showing me photos of it, actually. So amazing.
Given that you hadn't done your ATPL yourself,
I had not.
So no, I guess this is quite interesting that you've and not, I guess, a bit ballsy. Not any
it was really
to learn it, but then to try and teach it. So how did you go about that?
I did a bit of study. Went and I went and did a course, so I had to go and figure out like how to do it, and then a lot of study myself. And eventually, I thought, well, okay, got that, and I actually taught a couple of students before I'd even been going to sit the exam, because I wanted to make sure that they could pass, and they started to pass. So I thought, oh well, maybe I should have a go at it as well myself. So I sat and passed the exams. In the mid 90s, 90, I think 93, 93, 94 was when I would have sat it, probably 93, and I just then put them on ice for the rest of the time, because I didn't have anywhere near the hours that you need for an ATPL. But I had passed the subjects.
Is that where the frozen ATPL comes from then? Because you're putting them on ice, that was you?
Well, yeah. Oh, no, I think that frozen concept was around long before me, but I literally did put them in the freezer. Yeah, but fortunately they never go off once you've got that little credit bundle, as they now call it. But back then,
yes, as long as you get them all done, which we'll talk about.
That's right. Yeah, as long as I don't turn into a pumpkin at midnight on the dawn of the second year. So it's been a bit of a struggle for a lot of the crew over this last COVID period, but very fortunately CAS has put an extension on that for some of the COVID affected window and boosted it out. It used to be 3 years, and they shortened it to 2 years, and then during COVID they graciously allowed an extra year for difficulties that people had in getting to the exam venues. But I just literally put one on ice, and my instructing sort of tapered off when I started to teach ATPL full time. That's sort of really when the 172 came into it, because Warren and I decided, okay, well, if we're going to do this, probably not going to get a lot of flying, because you're going to be in the classroom, but by jolly, we're going to have a plane we can fly. So the sole purpose of the company was really to make sure that there was still a 172 in the hangar that we could fly and maintain our currency and keep it going. So I didn't want to give up the flying, but if I was full-time in class, I wasn't going to get the hours. So most of that flying was just personal private flying, 172, and eventually amassed 1,500 hours over the years. So thought, well, got the subjects, get the license. So next thing was multi-engine IFR. So that came along later. I didn't even do IREX back in the day. So then did IREX, taught Nav for long enough that IREX wasn't too much of a drama, and did the instrument, did the multi-engine. I had multi-engine from back in my CPL days, but actually went single engine instrument rating and then upgraded that to multi-engine instrument rating, which is not a common thing to do from what I hear, but I thought it was a great idea. Just fly around instruments on the single, get that sorted for a while, then you just do the multi-upgrade. It seemed a lot less traumatic than trying to do it all in a multi all at once, but it doesn't seem to be the way a lot of the schools run it these days.
Yeah, I've tried it a few times, but I generally find whatever you save in the cost of a single versus a multi, you spend on the lack of 60 knots worth of travel to get there. And then because you then try and transition from a slow single to a multi, everything's happening so quicker, even though you might have used the twin in the simulator. I haven't found it's benefited anybody. I know some places. It
benefited me because I had a single that was IFR.
Yeah, for sure. And that would work.
So, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it made sense to me because I had access to an IFR single. So I'll just use that one.
Yeah.
So then just did the upgrade in the twin. So, and that
makes sense.
in the pre-flight test era. So before the ATPL flight test of 2014. So I thought, I've got the time, got the hours. I didn't have the night, so needed to go and get a bit of night, but to crank the 172 out after class and go and do some laps and up to Bundy and do a few NDB approaches. And I literally spent a summer burning around every moment at night that I could to just get the 100 night that I needed. And so I got the command, got the night, got the instrument, got the multi. So back then you could just send it all away. Yeah,
filled in a form and we got it. Yeah,
filled in the form and back came the ATPL. So
much then the horror of everyone listening.
Exactly. What? You got ATPL, no flight test? Yeah. So there literally was none, but that was obviously very much out of step with ICAO. So it was not surprising. And Kiwis had that for a long time, the flight test, and every other country in ICAO has a flight test. So why didn't we? So it sort of made sense that would happen eventually, but certainly made a bit of a hurdle for the privateers if you just wanted to hold a solo, privateer ATPL without being in a check and training organization. That's a significant cost and effort to get into something too crew to actually even do the flight test.
Yeah, it really
We're fortunate to have a test officer here on the field up at Flight Options, so they still the Mustang simulator, and you can do an ATP flight test. They've got the King Air sim as well up there, the RFDS use. Yeah. But I think they do the ATPL test still in the Mustang sim. So I haven't really used the ATPL in anger, but at least I pull out the card when the students ask, have you got one? Yeah, here it is. I've got one.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you then attract some students? And then, like you said, you started in the Donga and it just started to grow.
Started in the Donga, did a couple of courses around the place, was doing classes originally in schools like over here at the Sunny Coast Airport, Fogarty's, as it was back then. Peter Fogarty was running the Aviation Academy. They had Sunshine Coast, what's called Air Marucci, actually, little RPT line doing part Navia trips to Brisbane, which, literally worked back then. You could run a little shoestring GA budget airline, and it wasn't that unusual. But so Air Marucci days and Fogarty's, and taught there for a while, taught down at Archerfield at Flight Training Australia, or actually Arena Aviation it was called back then. Perth, taught at the Royal Queensland Aero Club, Royal WA Aero Club, should say, sorry, and RQ. But spot. Went to RQ a couple of times as well. So,
and that's where you met Andrew. At the Aero Club, Andrew Bowmanis. Andrew.
Oh, Andrew Bowmanis. Well, he brought me over because he was running the CPL school over there at Rakwa and needed ATPL. So I'll come over and do it. So again, that was in 96. So that connection goes back a long way. So I did sort of divvy myself out a little bit away from base in the early days.
I guess you needed to, as we all do, just to sort of establish a reputation. And
that's right, gun for hire, and then just sort of say, well, we'll try running scheduled courses here and just see what the market is. And it just sort of gradually built, year by year on that. So ended up that I didn't have to go anywhere, and I don't mind going. I've been going to Fiji for about 5 or 6 years periodically, because there's a couple of schools over there. They run the Australian licensing structure over there in terms of the CPL subjects that they run are Australian commercial. They've got a memorandum of understanding with CASA to be able to use the CASA exam system for their licensing, and the same goes for ATPL. So I've been going over there to a school at Nandi to do a couple of subjects in my breaks every now and again. So I do like, that flexibility of.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah, someone's got to do it. Yeah, over to Fiji for a couple of weeks. So I sneak over to do a subject and then come back. So that hasn't cranked up very thoroughly again after COVID, but we're in talks again and probably head back over next year to do a couple of subjects at least.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. So then, so when I was there, what was it? So it was 2000, I think it was. You're just building the upstairs component.
Yeah, so that's right. We started with a little 20-seat room with a little supply shop out the front and the single, building basically, and single story. Soon outgrew that and we're needing, more space than we had. So we thought, well, gee, if we go upstairs, knock out that partition and basically make the whole ground floor a bigger classroom and move the shop, then we can basically use the entire floor on the bottom to, bump it out to maybe a 30-seater, and surely that'll be enough because we were maxing out the 20 seats and went upstairs for office space. So we had this little mini tower, we could see the runway, and had the it was just a spare lot. It was on Kitty Hawk Close and there was nothing around. We were literally the only building. We were just a little speck on a giant landscape, and we were doing the heli subjects. And when Warren was teaching the helicopter crews, quite often Black Hawk crews would come and land their Black Hawk literally on the grass next to the building to come and get a VTC. And so they do we're going to the AFT helipad. So they bring the Kiowa over or bring the Black Hawk, and there's thundering and buildings shaking. Oh, it's just a Black Hawk landing outside to come and pick up a map or something. So, but the tower was fine with that back in the day because there was, nothing around. So that was, that was good times. But then that still ended up being too small because we were maxing out that 30-seater, and just to give the guys enough room, enough desk space to have decent amount of map room, because you need a lot of acreage on your desk when you're doing flight planning ATPL. So then we build a whole other dedicated, bigger 50-seat classroom over on the next plot. And that was the next phase, and thought, well, surely that'll be big enough. We actually ended up extending that by a couple of meters a few years later as well, and putting an extra extension on the back. But
very handy. All right. So when you start attracting this number of students, as with pretty much any location of flying school, you are a bit unique, I guess, that you're not typically dealing with your local clientele. So accommodation becomes a big issue.
It is. It always has been. And we've tried hard to make it easy. We try to reduce the friction of that process for students. So one of those avenues was having a student house, share house arrangement. So it's relatively economical. They can come and we can manage it and just, in-house sort of share accommodation. So it's very popular. That certainly books out quickly. Over the years, we've upgraded that standard to include, air conditioning, because as the new generation comes, they think, I'm not going to stay in a stinking hot room in November on the Sunshine Coast, which is fair enough because the classroom's air conditioned. And
that was all full when I came, so I think
yes,
we managed to swing that penthouse suite in the new apartments across the other side of the airport, and that was a bit of a win. Before we get into some of the other nitty gritty, let's just talk about the ATPL structure. So, as you said, it's changed names a few times, and when I did it, it was all 7 exams. You had to sit them over 3 days. If you failed one, you had to redo them.
That was brutal. Yes.
What the hell? Then it just moved into the credit system, but you still had to buy 7, even if it was just one. They said, all right, you don't have to resit them all. But how have you seen all that sort of change, and what do you think now of the cyber exam system versus the written format on the old fax machine?
Yeah, massive evolution. So from the old exam fax system where they would fax the exams out and then they'd be photocopied and handed out, and senior comms, to what was, and it was similar at CPL level too. I don't know if you remember, did you ever go through the CPL final exam? There was the the independent exams, and then you had the final. And I was one of the last years that did the CPL final exam, which was like one whole giant scenario all in one, which was very good because you did weight and balance, you did your flight plan, you did your weather, and was sort of more representative of a preparation for a commercial operation. Yeah, so it actually made a lot of sense. And that there was the one exam for a while, for a brief period of ATPL. They quickly broke that into 4, which then soon became 5, and that was still having to be all passed within a 3-day period. And that was very brutal because you had to pass them all. You might miss one and you got the others, but you missed that one. So then you have to reset them all. But then the next time around, you miss a different one. So you end up actually having passed them all, but just not at the same time. So
not in the, Oh, it was
not
highly
in the
painful.
same 3-day period. So that was quite difficult. The 5 then became 6 and very quickly 7 when they split out aerodynamics and performance, and then planning and performance became separated. So they kind of divvied it out to the 7 that we have now, mirroring the 7 CPLs. And again, originally the window was quite draconian as well, because you would have to then pass all of them within 3 years. And if you hadn't passed all of them, they all vanished. So the stroke of midnight on the 3rd year, they all turned into a pumpkin. So you might have had 6 out of 7. You might have just been having a struggle with one particular subject, and your 3 years ticked over, and suddenly you woke up the next morning, didn't have any.
Yeah.
But
it's just the
current system, where you've got a rolling window, even though it's 2 years rather than 3, only the oldest credits age out. So as your MET credit turns 2, it expires. But if you didn't do another subject for another month or 2, that doesn't affect the next one until it ages out to 2. So as they fall off the conveyor belt now, you've got at least time to get the other ones on the conveyor belt, and you get 7 on a time on the conveyor belt before they all fall off. Then suddenly, once all 7 are on the conveyor belt in that 2 years, bang, they're frozen. And 2 years, it certainly gets away on you when you get your first job and get out there and start flying. The last thing you want to do is study ATPLs when you get home after a big day flying the line. So that's why I do tend to encourage crew to get onto it early and do it sooner rather than later. Because once you get out working, it's just so hard. You've got to take time off work. A lot of guys are giving up their job. Employers, particularly when they have their pick of it all, they were just, oh no, I'm not giving you time off. Yeah, stuff, I'll get somebody else. So you have to quit, and you've put everything on hold just to do them, and then you can't quite get the last one passed. So yeah, it's been an ordeal, and it's certainly the pinnacle of most aviation studies. I mean, IREX is renowned as being a solid exam, and the ATPLs have certainly got their reputation as well. But getting them all done, at least now they're in the bag, and you can just then focus on waiting for that 1,500 hours and getting the command in the night.
Yeah, well, this is, as I mentioned to you, this is probably, there's sort of 2 questions in one here. And when's the best time to do them? And then what's the best order to do them in? Now, my thoughts have always been, because of this repeat thing, do an easy one, do the harder ones, and finish with an easier one. So at least if one does expire, it's not the worst thing, but get the momentum going. But at the same time, if you do the exams too soon, sometimes depending on your background and experience, you'll still get through, but it's a lot harder than if you've got a little bit of experience behind you and exposure to the topics and subject matter. It might just make it a slightly easier process. So it's a bit of a pro-con either way, isn't it?
I see that a lot with the students in class. There are those that have been out there for a while, flying, multi-engine, often turboprop, turbine time. They deal with systems, for example, much better because they've got turbine experience. But when it comes to the more theoretical number crunching type, for example, flight planning, there's no advantage having a bit of line experience when it comes to crunching a PNR for decompression on a 727. So I tend to find the younger crew, maybe fresh out of CPL,
they're further out of that school environment.
That's right. They can still find their whiz wheel, and they can at least semi-remember how to do ground speed on the back of a whiz wheel. Those sort of lost nav skills to the line pilot, because you're just not doing any of that, just get so spoilt these days by AvPlan and Oz Runways and ForeFlight and all the EFBs and the planners. We just can't spin up a wind to save ourselves anymore, which is no indictment on the modern pilot. It's just not a skill set that you tend to put into practice, but you certainly need it for the exam. And fresh out of CPL, you still have some of that knowledge. So I really find that there's benefits both ways. And if you're straight out of CPL, you've got more of a study mindset. You've got some familiarity with the legislation. You still remember your law a little bit from CPL, because really ATPL law is just CPL law with a bit of multi-crew stuff. And really ATPL human factors is largely CPL human factors with a bit of multi-engine CRM and threat and error management. And MET is just, CPL MET with a little bit of upper level MET. So,
And that's a question I got asked as well, is that why is it some of the exams are really like 1.1 times harder than CPL exams, yet flight planning's like 5 times harder?
Yeah, and that's a valid question, I guess, because it's funny that, some people find flight planning to be their nemesis, probably most, to be fair, but others actually breeze through it with very relatively little drama because it's very numerical. So it's really, if you're a mathematically minded person and numbers speak to you and you can see trends, and it's the gross error checks that that number just doesn't seem right, but to some of us it does look right, to completely wrong. Oh, it's just as logical as any other number the calculator might spit out. So if you're an accountant type, I've had people that come through and said, "Oh, it's really good. Enjoyed flight planning." Oh, really? Enjoyed flight planning? What did you used to do? I was an accountant. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just numbers. So whereas others might really struggle with systems if you're not particularly mechanically minded. I say to the class, if you're the type that doesn't even open the bonnet of your car between services, or doesn't hang around the hangar during 100 hourlies and pester the engineers about stuff, and not particularly mechanically inclined, well, systems can be a challenge as well. But for, those who are inquisitive and like to pull your car apart or pull your parents' VCR recorder apart when it breaks, or your DVD these days, I suppose. But anything that is remotely of interest to you, if you did a bit of physics at school with a bit of electronics and DC and AC circuitry, that sort of stuff comes easy for those types. So there's no real nemesis, I guess, for everybody. But certainly the statistics show that planning claims its fair share of scalps, as far 100%. As probably the pinnacle of difficulty would be concerned.
Well, and as well, the questions I find, like Nav and performance, you could sit the same exam twice, as unfortunately I did, and almost 2 completely different exams. The weighting of the questions of the topics and stuff, like it was all Mercator projection, run blown, and conform, all this crap. And then I studied all that, and then the next exam had none of that and all this other stuff in it. I'm like, oh man,
all ETAs and wind in flight and PNRs instead. So, So it is. I think there's a bit of element to the luck of the draw. It is a randomized selection. There is, I think, CASA do have some sort of algorithm on their selection criteria that it's supposed to select from a certain category of questions, and tend to even it out. But often anecdotally, it seems that they're two exams in succession can seem like they're chalk and cheese. So
and I think that's it. It's just luck of the draw. Some get a really easy one, and others just get some of the nasty questions.
Yeah, and I think there's some perception to that as well too. If you're a particular weak area, you feel like you're just being,
of course,
targeted, and every question's electrics because I'm not good.
How did they know I didn't study and gave me the hard questions?
I sometimes joke with them and say, it's a little brain scanner. That's why the exam takes so long. It scans you for your deficiencies and dishes up your worst nightmare. But I don't think it actually
I had a
does
student
that.
like that literally thought CASA were out to get him with the BAK back in the early days of the cyber exam sort of transition. And I thought, mate, it's completely random.
Don't think it's that sophisticated. I don't really think they brain scan you and then dish up your worst nightmare. So
that's it. All right. Well, let's talk about that elephant in the room, as we sort of touched on, and that is flight planning. I know for a lot of people, they just find it absurd that we're still talking about a 727, which pretty much now the independent air freight have all wrapped up. There's none operating in Australia. Now, my argument has always been, well, if I scribbled out 727 and put 737 or A320, would it change anything? At the end of the
Yeah,
day,
and
I think it's
that's
like the Echo and commercial. It's just a platform. It's just a bunch of numbers for you to achieve an objective. What do you think?
well, exactly. If you want to complain about that, what about the Echo? It's a mythical piston twin with
Mm.
horrendous performance and chronic CFG issues, and yet it's just a representative type. All you really want to examine is, does the candidate have the capacity to interpret flight manual performance data, apply that in a construct of a practical exercise, and interpret and apply a company fuel policy, which every operator has. It's just an example of a company policy. Yes, we've got this amount of fixed reserve for decompression, and we scrap our variable, and then we recompute our figures. But they're all just representative of typical airline operator figures, and it's just 3 engines, sure. But if it's a twin, you multiply the fuel flows by 2 instead of 3. So if it was a 7.3, right, what difference would it make? If it was a Dreamliner or a 7.6, what difference would it make? So yeah, that's certainly my thoughts. Particularly, it's just representative of a performance set of figures, and you just need to be able to demonstrate your ability to interpret and apply performance manual figures and apply company policy figures to whatever it would be. That's right. You could scribble it out and make it a Dreamliner if it made you feel better.
And do you feel that the concept of manual flight planning is becoming irrelevant, like we were just talking about with EFBs and computer-based stuff? Do you think it's necessary?
Well,
I mean, I know I just did it with the Mallard, and the guy's like, "Well, I can't even help you because we don't do that anymore. It's really just for the type rating."
Yeah. it's so complex in a modern airline environment that the computers are much better at that sort of stuff than us. I still think it's a valid exercise for candidates to have the understanding of just what a decompressed point of no return represents, and what
how it affects
an engine failure and an ETP represents. And without actually doing them, if you just talk about them or don't actually compute them, I really just don't know how you transfer that concept of what's actually going on, so you know what that number on the flight plan actually represents. So that's our decision point. I guess you can just say, okay, well, up until here, we've got enough fuel to go elsewhere. There's arguments that you could just throw a computer plan from Emirates or Virgin or Qantas and say, well, look, here it is. We've hidden some errors in it. Find them, and you just go and debunk a computer plan, and that could be arguably a more representative exercise in the modern age. But we still do critical points at CPL level. So why do they do it at all, I guess, in that context, other than it's a foundational concept on which you can then build, so that when you see your computer plan, you can actually, okay, I know what that is. I know how they've done that. Thank God I don't have to do it, but I know what that represents because I used to be able to do that, or had to do it once.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the regulators' decision, I guess. They do it a bit differently in some of the other countries. I think, New Zealand do it on a different airframe type, but I think you still need to crunch the numbers.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's just that basic of awareness, just so you can. I mean, we still get it with Osramo's flight plan, F plan, and everything. It's a bit of a bullshit in, bullshit out system still, isn't it? So if you don't understand where the numbers have come from and how it's been created, you're not going to spot the errors, and you're going to go blindly follow it, or take off overweight or out of balance, or whatever the issue is.
And a modern company fuel policy is so complex that there's entire departments devoted to it. That's their specialty. They do the fuel policy, so they know every nuance of the fuel policy. And you want to talk to somebody, you ring them up, and there'll be an expert, But the crew still need a generic overview of just what the hell the company policy is trying to establish and trying to safeguard, and why we cut our fixed reserve back for contingencies, or why you recompute your variable, or why you need holding in a PNR at the alternate but not at your destination. There's fundamental ideas. Well, how come I'm going there's an inter, but my alternate's got a tempo, and in my PNR I've got to allow for the tempo fuel, not the interfuel? And without making somebody do that, I guess it's very hard to get that point across.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of the irony of the whole thing, that we're trying to educate people on how to do these things, yet the way the syllabus and structure has been set up, specifically flight planning and the time allocation, we have to do these sort of backwards exam answer techniques really than actually doing a proper method, don't we? And then the tolerances of some of the questions start to become so realistic, or the integrity of the graphs are so poor that then we start moving into exam technique and away from actually learning something.
Yeah, time pressures certainly are a constant challenge for some of them. I mean, there's some of the ATPL exams are quite generous. Systems they took an hour out of it about 15 or 20 years ago and didn't change the exam, but just statistically tracked the candidate's average time, and nobody was taking anywhere near the allocated time for systems, and they cut it back from 2.5 to 1.5 hours, and it's still plenty. You could probably argue an extra half hour would be handy in just about, all of the other big ones, flight planning particularly.
That's 3 hours now, is it?
It's 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go much more than 3, and it is really becoming a marathon. I think the only longer exam than that is IREX. I think IREX is the only thing longer than that. I think it's 3.5. Or is it 3 still?
I'd have to look, actually. It's been a while.
It might even be 3.5. I don't think anything's longer than that. And yeah, you're number crunching pretty consistently for that whole 3 hours in flight planning. However, as much as people do complain that it's such a race, if you've got a thorough understanding of the concepts and you're not just wheel spinning, no progress, just no traction, just wondering what to do, that is where you burn time. You see a question, okay, it's a PNR. Basically, I've got to establish how much fuel I've got, how much distance that's likely to get me, and start constructing your plan. And being rock solid on the methodology and rock solid on the numerical sequence, and just not being rushed on your visual, but just being competent. It's really competency in all of those core skills. Those candidates actually finish, maybe not all the time, but finish certainly enough of the exam to score. And I guess it's a little bit of a heresy to think for a moment, oh, well, I shouldn't be trying to finish the exam. You're really trying to pass it. If that only means doing 70 or 80% of it properly, that's probably better than doing 100% of it half-assed and getting 40% because you just fumbled over your mistakes. It's unforced errors. That's what costs people, just trying to go beyond the speed of their accuracy tolerance, and just the exam answers, they just drift too far off threshold because they're just fumbling the whiz wheel and making unforced finger trouble on the calculator. And you just try to find that pace where you can go, that the numbers are right, because I'm on the edge here. I'm on the ragged edge of my capability, and the numbers are just ricocheting from tolerance limit to tolerance limit. I just hope it's okay, but I can't go back and check. So just backing off the pedal a little bit, the proverbial hair in the tortoise, and say, okay, look, I just do what I can do, but I'll do it properly and just make sure I do enough of it, maybe not getting it all done. With the white box answers, as they call it, the dreaded typed answers, there's no guessing those.
Yes.
There's always the option with multi-choice that if you haven't got a chance of finishing it, at least you can at least pick one. But there's fewer and fewer of those multi-choice options now with the numerical type exams. And certainly the language exams are still all multi-choice, but a lot of the numerical entries are boxed these days, which does make that a bit more challenging. So do them early on, do the typed answers sooner rather than later, do the big marks.
So they're the 5 markers these days.
Yeah, that's right. Well, 5's the most you get in any of them. That's for flight planning. None of the other exams allocate that many marks to one question, but a 5 in flight planning is a big one to give away just because you're rushing it at the end because you didn't give yourself adequate time to tackle it.
Yeah, so the current advice these days is to hit those first and then work your way
maybe
through
not
the beginning.
First. Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily probably not a perfect exam strategy that works for everybody, but I do encourage people just to not leave their big ones too late in the game. You might want to ease into it just get your confidence up with a couple of small ones and a small typed answer or a couple of multi-choice, but I always encourage people to get into the big ones within the first hour of flight planning, because if you just start at question 1 and meander your way towards question 18 or whatever it is, and you think, at the 1.5 hour mark, I'm okay, I'm sort of 12 questions in, I'm good, but you haven't really done many of the big ones, and then you get bogged down, and then you start, over capitalizing on a 4-pointer, and you spend 45 minutes on it, and that's just false economy. You just can't really recover from that, and then start rushing it, and then make unforced errors. So just doing those 4s and 5s under the luxury of time. And if you have to compress yourself a little bit at the end, better to be fumbling over a couple of 1s and 2s at the end rather than fumbling over a couple of 4s or 5s, because that's risky
right.
business. Yeah.
So a couple of those would just be the end of you.
Exactly. Yeah. 3 and it's all over.
Yeah, that's it. So during COVID, obviously you probably had to, as everyone did, look at things a bit. And did you obviously love the face-to-face, and I think personally that over just a by yourself in your own time online course for ATPL, I think for the majority would suit them. So how did you go during COVID and adapting into that sort of format?
It was very challenged. Like the entire industry was very challenged, and we were not immune to that. I'm very grateful that we were able to continue running classes face to face. We pretty much just adopted the guidelines of the universities and whatever they were doing. Schools stopped delivering face to face for a while. Unis didn't necessarily, so we sort of just followed the uni model. We didn't get the numbers, of course, because the border closures made the access to us, because a lot of the clients are interstate, and we have a small pool here on the southeast corner, and we pretty much cleaned that out during COVID.
Taught them all.
Because people who could get up from Brisbane, and the funny thing about it was the demand was skyrocketing because people are sitting at home, not flying.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
So,
did you find people,
ATPLs.
whilst everyone's losing their jobs, but did you see people realise that it's all going to bounce back, and this is the perfect time to do it?
Most people very quickly saw this as an opportunity to upskill. So I've got downtime, so I'll upskill and let's get onto the ATPLs. And so our distance ed went bananas, and we've always offered that distance ed component, although it's self-paced and not me online Zooming, but always access to me via phone and email and text. So that did go very well, and that certainly increased. And those who could get here did, mainly from Queensland, because we unlimited. Well, there's a few minor metropolitan lockdowns, but generally people could get to us from within the state, and they did, and they came as much as they were able. And we had low numbers and certainly did see a downturn, but I think people who were laid off, they quickly saw this opportunity to at least start and get some of those subjects out of the way. And it's come back in a rush, obviously, since then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
I have heard there's a lot of issues in the airlines at the moment where they're having to overlook some people because they're ready for command upgrades, but they haven't done the subjects. Are you finding that at all?
Yeah, I've got 737 pilots in my classroom at the moment. I've got multi-engine turbine pilots who are out there doing line ops, but stuck in the right seat because they got in without ATPL theory credits, and they might have the hours, they might have everything, but they've got a couple of subjects yet to do. So that is creating a bottleneck, and people are being passed over for command, and it's a vicious cycle because they need to get away and they can't let them go because they're maxed out and there's no roster space, and every reserve day is being filled. And no, you can't have some time off. No, what do you mean time off? That's ridiculous. Why would you think that? So people just can't get the time to study. So it is, it's a cycle, and aviation is renowned for its boom bust cycle, but this time this COVID bounce back is quite spectacular, at least
isn't it?
From what I've seen. Yeah.
So it's really feeding into that before, like, just if you've got the opportunity to do it, you reckon just get into it early.
Oh, absolutely, because I don't know how long this will last, but it seems it's kind of unprecedented in the 30 years that I've been teaching to see.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the airlines are coming here, like doing road shows. Can we come and talk to your students? And since when do airlines come fishing?
Oh, I heard a Qantas advertisement on the radio just coming home today. Like, we're looking for pilots, cabin crew, blah, blah, blah. I thought, my God, never heard a Qantas ad for pilots in my life.
Sign-on bonus for Rex. What planet are we on? So so that's quite extraordinary. And the states are the same. They're offering significant,
amazing money
incentives to lure people in. Absolutely.
So it's
great opportunity for those who are on the way through. I kind of wish I was back there at that point. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to the classroom.
Might have taken it off ice after all.
Maybe.
And do you see the future of the delivery changing to an online format, or you're finding people are actually enjoying coming to you because it allows them to just, I'm here to do a job and not have all those other home distractions?
That as well, but it's really it's like we've had a lot of comments. It's like being in class with such a broad spectrum of the aviation industry, right from, military fighter pilots transitioning, transport crews, foreign crews flying jets, high time GA. It's a little microcosm of Australian aviation, and people make so many contacts and job offers, and people say it's way better than LinkedIn because just make these connections. And
it's almost their first networking opportunity, isn't it? In a way,
for a lot, it's their first real immersion in it, and it's just an extraordinary opportunity. Not only to immerse yourself in aviation and saturate yourself in ATPL, but just the actual people you're with in the classroom and the contacts that you make. And there's jobs changing left, right, and center all through the course. And we need us an instructor. And I'm just about finishing my instructor rating. Or we need somebody, or maybe I'll go and do my instructor. Well, if you do it, come over and see me because we need somebody, or we need a chieftain pilot, or as you go up. So it's just that's a very valuable networking opportunity that people find so beneficial. And 20 years later, they're still in contact with their class of 2005.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? I know I still talk to a few people from course and other such, events, training events and things. And it's a great way to do that. And just, I think, as I've been saying in some of the looking for your first job episodes that I've done, just talking to people, this stuff's not advertised. And this is how you find out things.
Absolutely.
And what
so
people
much is
are
word
doing.
of mouth. And recommendations. Yeah. And then you meet somebody and you see straight away, yep, they're a solid person. They're the kind of people that we're looking for, much more so than just a resume arriving, on via email. It usually doesn't make it past the inbox.
Yeah. Are you finding the guys that are coming, guys and girls, but I just say guys as people, coming from operational work, they're finding the exams fairly straightforward, or is there still challenges there? Is it like?
Yes, I think like I've had 727 pilots, believe it or not, back in the day. I mean, back when we were operating 72s still on Australian freight organisations and those sorts of operations, but others doing multi-crew jet ops, and knowing about it, or even flying heavy military stuff. I go, well, look, surely you guys can sort this out. And they go, yeah, we're doing it. But what you're teaching and what we're doing is just filling in so many gaps. And I know what we're doing, but now I know why we're doing it. Now I can see how it fits in. And just, it's such an eye opener to even those guys who are flying the heavy stuff, doing the job, but often just with a surface level of bare understanding through the type rating, the ground school, because boom, 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 get on the line and flying the line. And there's your P&O, by the way. And so this is just filling in so many gaps for even those experienced crews on so many levels. So, I used to be a lot more worried about that, but so many people have said that to me over the years. And, I always feel, I've got Hornet pilot in there, from F-18s, and we're talking about critical Mach numbers, and I feel like, what am I doing? Like, can you come and take this session, please? They go, no, it's good. Like, we did it in school, but like they glossed over that bit. So this is really good stuff for me. And they're loving it. So that sort of encourages me that the content that we're delivering and the syllabus and the exams, it fills in so many gaps for the crews that are even doing it.
Yeah,
which is a bit surprising.
Yeah. No, like I find the same thing. As I'm put in a position where I'm, teaching or checking someone much more senior and experienced to me. But like I said, they know a lot about that. But the stuff that we're doing, it's just different, and it's great. There's no egos. It's just everyone can feed off each other and learn from each other. And it just goes to show it doesn't matter. The learning never stops, does it?
Oh, I learn I learn so much from every course. Like when you've got experienced crews in there, got Herc pilots and Falcon from the Falcon pilots from the VIP squadron, and we've had Hornet pilots quite regularly, and roulettes on occasion, from them. And think, those stories that we tell and we'll often throw to one of those crews to sort of back up a point about when you might have done a PNR on your way out to Diego Garcia, or when you might have had to, make a hard call at the engine failure critical point or what have you, and just puts all of the practicalities against that theoretical idea.
Relevance to
actually,
it. Yeah.
So you actually do that. So having that level of experience in class and being able to throw to those experienced crew, and then the others in the class who are maybe just raw CPL, their eyes are wide and they go, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I see. That's
it's not like high school. It's like, what do we need to learn this for? I'm never going to use this." But
so it's nice not to have a classroom full of homogenous experience levels, and we've got everybody from raw CPL right through to high time multi-engine turbine, and everyone lens of everyone. Is sometimes the experienced guys can't remember how to do the whiz wheel, so one of the young 18-year-olds come over and it's, here's you. Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, that's good. I forgot that. So it works both ways. And yeah, that's right. Egos are left at the door, and we just get on and all immersed in the learning experience, me included. So never stop.
Yeah, brilliant. And as you know, as a teacher, it's just that privilege, isn't it, to do that and see everyone get through the exams, but then they touch base in years go by and say, "Hey, I've made it to here," and that's just where it all just becomes worthwhile. And even as I know you have,
absolutely,
they're flying us around or whatever else. It's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I like to listen on the PA for the captain. Oh, yeah, remember them? Yeah. Sometimes I send up my business cards. Make sure you land soft off down the back. Yeah, but even this week we've had a Kalita captain come in as on 777s over in the US.
Saw that, yeah.
Couple of Atlas guys come in, and some of my old Oshkosh buddies, we catch up over there. But those crews coming through and saying g'day, and I often try and wrangle them up in the classroom to say g'day to the class, because it's just a great experience to be able to hear the perspective of what it's like to be flying anywhere in the world. So
yeah,
not just Australian domestic operations, but the world as well.
Yeah, well, you must be all air showed out between Oshkosh and going to the Space Centre there, and then the Pacific Air Show.
No, we're just waiting for next year. Just can't wait. Woo! Countdown to Oshkosh, only 300 and something days to go. I don't know if I'll get there next year, but I'm planning on it. So yeah, that's just something. Elle, you've been over to?
I was. I went in '91. It was just after. See, I was pretty young then, but it was just after Desert Storm. So, I remember the B-17s, the B-24s, they had F-14s, F-18s. So you could touch everything except the F-117 that was surrounded by Marines with F-16s.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
It was just phenomenal.
The things they have parked on Boeing Plaza there that you can touch. There's a C-5 Galaxy just sitting there. You can walk through it. There's no fences around much, except, maybe a Raptor. I put them over the other side now. It's the equivalent of the 117. But the Raptors, put them over there. But there's 16s and there's 15s and there's 18s, sitting around everywhere, and T-38s from NASA, and the Dream Lifter came in this year, and the Super Guppy, and oh my gosh, that's what's not there. Just you walk around.
That was incredible. That Super Guppy, like the fact that it's got propellers, just insane.
I know, it's so amazing, and you just ride up next to it and walk through it, and so that place is just astonishing, and my I just come back so inspired and enthused, and I just spam everyone with stories for the rest of the year. Basically, that's the class. Here we go, another Oshkosh story. But the Pacific Air Show just last weekend was great. I was super impressed by that, and
everyone's getting very worried with the late announcements of things, but you just had to trust they had it in hand. And I think a lot of people sort of pulled out because of the uncertainty, but I think they've done their proof of concept now, and can look forward to something bigger and better.
It was so good, like honestly, and the backdrop is unbeatable. Like doing Surface Paradise, you can be dabbling the water, and there's an Osprey there doing its thing, and then Jeremy Miller with the crew come down in mass formation of RVs, and that was so tight. So
Jeremy did a good job with the guys.
It was so good. Oh, I was blown away by that, and then the Hornet display, like that's always very spectacular, It was everything. Yak 110, whatever that thing is, two yaks bolted together with a jet engine slung between. And what am I looking at? It was
because
just
joining them together wasn't enough.
yeah, it was so unusual. Two radials with 4 gear legs and a jet engine, and the sound of it with the 2 engines and the jet overlaid all of it. So yeah, I was just loving it. So, but yeah, I'm a bit of a tragic that way. So
yeah. No, unfortunately, there's a lot of eye candy up here. Like I say, the Ospreys a lot and the Jets and stuff, but still just that setting. Like we have Middle Beach, they do a few things every now and then, but it's a great setting. Hopefully you'll be able to see the F-35 because that thing going through its paces is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah.
I might see you there next year.
Absolutely. Planning on it.
All right. Well, let's look. Thank you for your time. Let's start wrapping things up. So before we finish, top tips just for approaching ATPL study. What would you say to everyone looking at getting into it, apart from coming to see you, of course?
Yes. Well, just be careful once your clock starts. So just think about, if you're going to do even one of them, you're going to
really plan 7.
Start that countdown clock. So yeah, you do have to plan a little bit. Think, I'll do MET. And then a year later, I've done MET, but I didn't get to do anything else. And there's a year of your clock gone. So then you can find yourself really pushing uphill to get the remaining 6 done in the remaining time. So yeah, certainly have a plan to, okay, I'm going to just relentlessly slog away at this for the next 18 months or however long it's going to take so that I don't run myself short and they start to fall off the perch. I do think starting with an easy 1 or 2 is good, as you said, to get into the groove. And if you're not long out of your CPL, yeah, MET's not that much of a challenge. It's CPL MET plus a bit. And any of those other 3, which I don't actually even deliver classroom lectures for those because they are similar enough to CPL that it's not really necessary to even attend a course to bridge that knowledge gap. And we've got the full support, and there's me on the phone. And if you need any assistance, I can give you pointers. If there's an airlaw reference you're having trouble hunting down, I can help dig it out for you. So there's all that support available for those 3. And then if you can come to class, that's great. And I just really think people do find coming to class is more than just the benefit of having it delivered to you. And certainly being spoon-fed is a little bit easier than having to scrounge it all for yourself. And I try to make it a little bit enjoyable and interesting, and obviously sprinkle it with Oshkosh anecdotes liberally, but try to get onto the content and stay on focus as much as we can too. But doing it at home, it's completely doable. It's probably not the easiest way, but it suits some. Not everyone's suited to self-study. You need to be well disciplined and have a plan and knuckle down and commit to that. I have people sometimes start on self-study and get partway through a subject. I'd just rather come. And you can easily do that. We make it very easy to roll over from distance ed to class attendance. So that happens quite regularly. So if you're having difficulty getting time off, or you literally don't have the ability or time or finances to be able to invest in the course, certainly begin self-study and those little 3 ones, but just be aware that you're starting a clock and you need to be prepared to follow through with the rest of them. Otherwise it's going to get messy at the other end. And if self-study works for you, just keep going along that way. But sometimes people just come for 1 or 2. I don't always see people coming
for everything
for everything all the time. Some do. Quite a lot have become lately deciding to break it up and come twice, which is actually a sensible idea, because by the end of the 6 weeks in class, you are getting a little bit battle fatigued and a little bit worn after a few exams, because the exams roll on relentlessly, like every week or 2 if you're here, because we schedule the exam at the end of each module. So you do NAV, and then there's revision, and then you prep for the NAV exam, and then NAV exam, and then the next day we start systems, and then you do systems and the system exam. So after a couple of those, you're starting to get a little bit weary. So by the end of it, which is the harder of the subjects too, you're looking at flight planning coming in maybe not as fresh as you would be if you just pitched in for flight planning. But I would suggest doing performance before flight planning, so that the order of a lot of the others is kind of very flexible, but I would not advocate doing flight planning not having done performance and loading, because they're both 727 based.
Same themes, yeah.
Yeah, you've got familiarity of the flight manual. We've got the chapter structure layout. There's a lot of concepts that we cover. to a superficial degree in performance and loading that we revisit a lot more deeply for flight planning. And I just see crew struggle more with flight planning when they haven't first been through performance. So just one thing to bear in mind is if you're going to do it that way, just do performance first, please. That would be my suggestion.
And do you feel IREX is important to have done beforehand?
It's
not
a
necessarily
help. Mostly
rating, but IREX.
IREX itself, mostly for Nav. Nav and IREX have a lot of synergy. There's not a lot of synergy between IREX and flight planning, even though it's all an IFR plan. Literally, you're reading ERC tracks and distances. That's about as much instrument flying theory as there is. But Nav has a lot of instrument knowledge, GPS, principles and operations, all the ground aids, DME, ILS, errors, limitations, and principles of operations of those aids. So I always tell people that IREX is a good primer for ATPL Nav, but ATPL Nav is a good primer for IREX. So it works both ways. And it's nice to have done it. It's a bit easier to manage Nav having done IREX, but it's doable either way. And IREX is a little bit less heavy duty having done ATPL Nav. So, but if you can bring IREX to the ATPL table, then I think probably so much the better.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, great advice. All right, well, last one to wrap up. Your best advice for some aspiring pilots. What would you say?
Fly anything you can get your hands on. Get some tailwheel time if you can, because it's amazing how few pilots these days get the opportunity to do tail dragger time. I always do a poll in class. Who's got tail dragger time? It used to be half the class, and it's gradually dribbled away to maybe 5% these days. So yeah, anything with
stick and rudder skills, just so good.
That's right. Just get into it. Fly anything you can. Fly all you can. Fly as much as you can, and enjoy every minute of it. That's my advice.
It's funny that, isn't it? We get into it because we love aviation, yet it just seems so many people, it just somehow turns into a bit of a drain and a job. But I know I'm so fortunate at what I do, and many others have managed to pick the right path and just do it because we love it. So it's so important to have fun.
It's sad if the passion is lost, although fortunately I know so many that are still as crazy as they ever were, and they'll not be flying Atlas 7.4s on the weekend, but they come home and they tool around in their J3 Cub because they just love that. And that I love that too. When they're the top of the tree as far as you can go in the industry, but that's what you see at Oshkosh too. These legends of the industry doing it all, but still at the grassroots being absolutely committed to home builds and design and
real flying.
Charlie Precourt is shuttle commander, but he's on the board of EAA. He's like Charlie Precourt, and yet he's there, and he's so committed to the industry, and that's what you see over there. That it's just such a broad spectrum. Sorry, I keep talking about Oshkosh. I just rabbit on about it forever. But,
might have to do another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. But fly as much as you can. That's mine, and enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Nathan, look, thank you so much. I know there's a class waiting, so I better let you get back to them all. And
I'll go and check on them now and see how they're getting on. Exam tomorrow. So
yeah, all right. Well, dig deep. Maybe they'll have to wait till Monday, so this won't help them. But
sure,
I'm sure you've told them already.
Yeah.
All right. Look, thank you again for your time. Really great to catch up. It's been 20 years, and congratulations to you, Vanessa, and the team for the 30th anniversary coming up. It's a fantastic achievement.
The crew were just absolutely instrumental in getting the move underway with Vanessa and Kate and Brett. I could not have done that without them just being able to just hand over those heavy duty involved hands-on moves and decisions while I'm trying to manage the class, and we're trying to keep it all going. So I cannot let the interview finish without a shout out to the staff here that keep it all running, because wouldn't be able to do it. And just so thankful to Warren, the original founding director and now silent partner today as well, because he wouldn't be here without any of them. So it's certainly been a team effort, and not me on my lonesome by any means.
Yeah, no, 100%. And look, you know you're doing the right thing if you're here 30 years later, so congratulations.
Yeah, most of the staff been here just about that long.
Vanessa was there. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if you want to get in touch with you, I guess everyone can jump on the website, advancedflighttheory.com.au, and all the information is there. Can talk to Vanessa and the team and work out how much or little you want to do, exchange courses or in-house. And
Facebook, Insta. Yeah, Vanessa keeps the social media buzzing too, so you'll find us on there.
Yeah, little dog.
Yeah, exactly, Lando. Yeah.
He's sitting on the
ground
there.
Yes, he's behind me here. Yeah.
Yeah, haven't heard a peep. All right, Nathan. Well, thank you. Say hi to the class for me, and we'll catch up when I'm over that way. I'll drop in for sure.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Cheers. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to Nathan and all the team at Advanced Flight Theory and the students for doing some study whilst I borrowed Nathan. Hope you all passed and got the results you're after. Fantastic chat. Like I said, there's another 15, 20 minutes there that we were talking about all sorts of amazing things and anecdotes and stories. And if you'd like to hear all that, that'll be available on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. From $5 a month, you can get fully tax-deductible exclusive content, as well as feeling warm and fuzzy that you are supporting the creation of this amazing podcast, which you're listening to right now. All right, that's it for this week. Take care, and remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. Talk to you all soon. Cheers.